Hello. Today we are going to be having a webinar to capture change management best practices in your project schedules. We have a couple of different scenarios that we're going to walk through, and we're primarily going to talk about how to handle baselines, variances, and how to use deadlines to help you capture some key events that you need to capture, but you don't want to have an impact on your overall project schedule. My name is Amanda Coolman. I've been working with project management with Microsoft Project, Project Online, Project Server, reporting via Power BI and Excel for more than 8 years now. I am certified in managing projects and portfolios with Microsoft PPM and Project and in SharePoint. And for our agenda today, we are going to start a little bit with about Intigent. What do we do? What services do we provide? Then we're going to look at some baseline best practices, variances, how they're calculated in your schedules, deadlines, when you might want to use them. We're going to go through these three things fairly briefly, but still kind of talking about some of the main concepts that then I'm going to show you in two different Microsoft project schedules. Then we're going to walk through two different scenarios about how to capture different changes. Main questions, here's our scenario, our project's in execution. Work has been applied and a client comes back and they ask you for some changes. How do you incorporate that? How do you share it? And then how do you communicate that with your stakeholders and with your client? And we're going to have one that is a fairly small change request, and then one that is a bigger kind of change to your schedule that you need to make sure that you capture and you track. And then we are going to have our conclusion where I will share some upcoming webinars with you all with those dates and the names of those. So Intigent, what do we do and how could we potentially help you? Well, we are a Microsoft-focused company. Microsoft Project, Project Online, Project Server, Teams, SharePoint, anything that's in that Microsoft realm, we have had experience with. So some of the ways that we help some of our clients right now are dealing with that Project Server and online, the enterprise project and resource management. How can you view all of your projects across the portfolio? You want to group them by programs, you want to group them by business unit. And same with resources. How can you look across 100, 500 resources and see, based on business unit, based on what role they fill in your organization, if they have too much work scheduled or not enough, where do you have availability left, where do you not? Reporting on those as well with Excel or Power BI, how to pull it out and then present it in a way that makes sense, whether it's to you or whether it's to executives. Dealing with Microsoft Project scheduling best practices, just in general, here are the best practices, and then we can work through some different scenarios, as well as handling Microsoft Project support and really just Q&A for any of your particular projects. Because a lot of our clients work in a lot of different industries, we have a lot of experience with those as well. We have construction, medical, product development, new product development. We have experience in a lot of different industries across all of our collective experience here. So jumping straight into our change management. For a lot of what we're going to go through today, we are going to assume that all projects have already been started. They have already been scoped. They have already begun work. And whether your project is tracked with a fixed work method, meaning you have a number of hours you have to adhere to, or a fixed duration method, which means it's more of a calendar kind of dates deadline that you track to. These change management practices will be able to help you with either one of those ways, whether it's a straight path or you have a kind of a blend of how you have set up your project initially. As we've talked about in some of the previous webinars, and if you have had any conversations with anyone here at Intigent, baselines are always recommended to be taken once your project has finished being developed. You have put in all of your task list, you have created your work breakdown structure, created your predecessors, estimated your work and duration, and assigned resources, but before any actual work has actually started on your project. So at that point in your project is ready for execution. The very first thing that you need to do is to set your baseline. As your project progresses, and what we'll look at today is that you will be able to look at different elements of your project schedule. You'll be able to look at the work hours, the cost, your finished date variance as your project progresses. Being able to say exactly what part in your project schedule did things start to go off track, and by how much. So when you very first need to set that baseline, I always recommend that you set that 2 times. The first time for baseline 1. This is your initial baseline. You set it at the very start of your project and you never update it. If you add tasks, if you have major scope changes, this baseline 1 is going to be static because it gives you a way to go back to how your project was set up at the very beginning. When I very first started, this is the task list I had. These are the estimates that I had, and you never update this baseline. And then I recommend that you immediately go back and you set baseline 0. Baseline 0 is the most important baseline because this baseline set of values is what all of your variances are calculated from. It doesn't look at the most recently saved baseline, whether that's 1, 2, 3. It looks at baseline 0. And baselines are just a snapshot of your project. It is a point in time that you, as the owner of the project schedule, the project manager, say, as of this point today, I am going to set my baseline values, and it's going to copy over all of your values for work, duration, start date, finish date, and cost into the corresponding set of baseline values. As your project progresses, those baseline values will not change. They will stay static. So very beginning of your project, you set baseline 1 and baseline 0. As your project progresses, you may have major scope changes throughout the project, or as part of your business process, if your projects are perhaps a year long, maybe once a quarter you go and you baseline. That way at the end of your project, you can do a lessons learned. Say at the end of quarter 1, here is where my project was. At the end of quarter 2, here is where my project was then. And then baselines 2 through 11 just capture those different ones throughout the project. And in one of our scenarios, we'll look at capturing those multiple baselines and how you might want to go through those steps. So variances, as mentioned, are calculated by comparing the values for work, duration, start, finish, and cost against baseline 0 or baseline no number or just baseline. There's several different names for it. But really what it means is that baseline value that doesn't have any numbers after it. It's the very first option that you'll have. And the calculations for your variance look at comparing those 2 different values. So for example, your work variance is going to look at what is currently showing in your schedule in the work column. It does a copy of the baseline for every single task in your project, even down to the assignment level. So you can even see for a particular task that has 5 people, how much work was originally allocated to each one compared to what they are currently working. And these variances look to capture and calculate the work compared to your baseline work column, or your cost compared to your baseline cost, or your finish compared to your baseline finish. We're going to look at a couple of different tables, a couple of different views, and in each of those, any of your column headers will show you the formula that's being used to calculate. If you hover over the header for cost variance, it's going to give you this exact formula here. So that way you can see it. After you get familiar, you'll memorize it, but you can always have it there for reference if you're thinking, how exactly is this calculating? The last kind of scheduling kind of thing to put into your project schedule is deadlines. One of the most important things in dealing with your schedule and setting it up is to make sure that it is flexible. It's dynamic. If you make a change all the way at the top of your schedule, you'll see the ripple effect all the way down at the bottom. That's something that we practice ourselves. I practice in the projects I manage. Deadlines are a way for you to provide a due date in your schedule without impacting the task dates or the scheduling. You're not putting a constraint on a task saying this task has to be completed by April 9th, but you can put a deadline in that says outside of the schedule, I need to track that this has to be done by April 9th. And if my finish date passes that date, it's going to give me an indicator to show me that this task finish date is now past my deadline. Deadlines do impact your critical path. So I've had some clients that say they want to put every finish date for their tasks into their deadlines because everything needs to be hit exactly when the finish date says. Well, what that will do is put all of those tasks on your critical path. So when you go to analyze it, it's going to make it a little bit difficult because everything will highlight as red. So choosing only the key milestones and the key tasks to set deadlines for will help you, particularly as your project progresses. I use deadlines a lot when it comes to my milestones. I set my milestone deadlines to be within 1 to 3 days after what the scheduled finish date is to give me a little leeway. And then as my project progresses, actual hours are charged, actual durations are charged, and my deadlines slip. I've created a custom filter in my version of project where I can filter to say, show me any tasks where that deadline has passed and the project or the task has not yet been completed. One more PowerPoint slide here, and then we'll go into our scenarios and jump back and forth between Microsoft Project. A couple of tips for updating your project as the project progresses. I have highlighted 4 here, but there are so many more, and these 4 we will go through today as well. If you have status meetings where you pull open that project schedule and you're walking through that with your team, using the highlight, filter, and group by functions help give you visibility into different aspects of your schedule. For example, you can highlight tasks that are late. You can highlight milestones in your schedule. And as you're walking through your project with your team, you're able to quickly and easily identify whichever kind of task that you're looking for. I like to have mine filtered for milestones or highlighted for milestones. That way I can easily see what are my deliverables driving to? What are the key dates we're focusing on? Are we ahead? Are we behind? And if we're behind, what's impacting it? And if you have any task level custom fields, you can use that group by as well to group as well. And several of the examples we'll go through here will use those custom fields to give you more information about your schedules. If you're working in Microsoft Project locally, not in an enterprise environment, you can add custom fields to your schedule at the task level at any point. But if you are working in an enterprise environment, then I would definitely recommend working with your admin to have those added. That way you have the ability to group, filter, and highlight based on that additional information. Using deadlines to track those dates. And then finally, if you're calculating earned value or you update your project by using the Update Project button, making sure you use that status date to indicate this is the last time that I, as the project manager, have gone through my project and updated it. I'm saying that as of April 2nd, my project is updated. I haven't updated it today and haven't updated it yesterday. And particularly for those earned value calculations. All right, so the first scenario that we are going to look at is a scenario where the project has been scoped out, has been agreed to based on how you normally create your projects. As you create projects more and more, if there are similar types, you have a similar work breakdown structure, work and duration estimates that you use as placeholders until you know those actual values. So in this case, our project has been scoped and the work has begun. We actually have the % complete that's been updated for a couple of the tasks and the project is in execution. So the client comes and they ask for an additional review of documentation before going on to the final stages of the project. So the main questions we're going to look to answer are, how should you add in this new task to your current project? And how do you show or communicate that by doing this, there's going to be a ripple effect? It's going to lengthen your project. You might have some cost effects as a result of that. Maybe you need more manpower to help push these things through. When adding additional tasks, these are the 4 key top levels that I recommend. When you add new tasks, make sure that you have a prefix that you recognize. In almost all of the change management that I do in my own schedules, I start them with CR001, 002 to indicate which change request this new task is a part of. It makes it easy for me to find, easy for me to sort, and easy for me to filter on. Making sure that those new tasks have a predecessor, that they have been actually included into your work breakdown structure, and that you haven't just added a task that does not relate to anything else. Not leaving any hanging tasks in your schedule, but making sure that that new task is impacted and can be shown downstream. For single tasks, 1 or 2 tasks, updating the baseline for only those. You don't have to rebaseline your entire project. You can rebaseline only a handful of tasks to incorporate them into an existing baseline value set that you already have. And again, using custom fields to help define the parts of your project that are going to be impacted. So I have one project schedule here. This is a construction schedule. And as you can see, we have several different parts of this. I'm going to use my outline and roll it up to level 1. This is a long project. We have lots of different deliverables, sections of work, and this project goes for about 18 months. Use my outline to go all projects. And I can see that my project also has some percent complete. Some of my tasks have been done. The baseline for this project has already been set. So before I'm going to add in anything, I want to see what is my current status of the project. How can I see what the variances are right now? So in your view ribbon, this section right here for highlight, filter, and group, we're going to come back to this section here, but your tables drop down here gives you a lot of different ways to see the same information. Right now we are in our table called the entry mode. I'm going to come to my variance table here, and this shows me the variance based on dates. It gives me a view that's very similar to my Gantt chart where my task list here, my work breakdown structure follows what I put it in, something that makes sense to me. I have my start and my finish date, which are my current start and finish dates. This is where my tasks are currently scheduled to end. And then I have my baseline start and finish dates because I did set my baseline. You can see that they're not the same. My baseline finish for this task is March 9th, and my currently scheduled finish date is March 15th. And then it gives me a start and finish variance that compares those two. So just by looking at a quick glance at this project schedule, I have my project summary task here, so I can look at the impacts of my project as a whole. I can see here that as a whole, I have a 0-day start variance, which means all of my tasks right here have started on time, but I have a 10-day finish variance. Just like with adding lag and lead to your tasks, a positive number in your variance means that you are over budget, that you are adding days, you're adding hours. Where a negative means that you're taking away, you are under budget, you're ahead of schedule. So for this project, we are currently 10 days behind schedule. And again, just like duration, this is calendar days, so about 2 weeks behind schedule. And as I look through here, either summary by summary or task by task, I can see exactly where my project started to come off track. And right here, it's really right at the beginning of my project. Things got a little bit delayed right from the beginning. And as it progressed, coming down here to my mobilize section, it really just kind of compounded on itself that we keep getting further and further behind schedule. Looking at my tables, I can also look at my cost. If I want to, same information, all of this information is cost related. My same work breakdown structure, my baseline cost, my actual cost, and then that variance. So actually, even though we are behind schedule, we are under budget by about $1,000. Come back to my entry table here. And when you are handling those status meetings, again, using the highlight filter and group will really help. So I'm going to use my highlight here. This is my favorite one. I can use my highlight and I can highlight my milestones, for example. So again, anything with a 0-day duration task will be highlighted, which you should have at the end of every summary or every deliverable. So I can come, these are the key milestones we're driving towards. And these can be used to help kind of drive some conversations that you have. Your critical tasks as well. Everything in our project is critical, along with any of the other ones here. I can do a date range. What is scheduled for this week? So I'm going to look for tasks that start and finish before, and it'll highlight any tasks that are scheduled for that time period that I have done. So whether it is scheduling it for starting or finishing, it'll show you that update right here. It'll highlight those tasks. Let me go ahead and clear that. Same with filtering and same with group. Again, really focusing on what part of your projects that you really need to focus on. In my project here, I have also identified 2 custom fields so that I can group my tasks and be able to see roll-ups based off that. And particularly when dealing with change requests, if you have a certain number of hours, I have 50 hours for this change request, and I need to make sure that I allocate them appropriately. Having task custom fields here will show you those. If I want to look at my task stage here, I'm going to choose my dropdown. I'm going to group on this fields. I can see based on what I've identified each of my project as, I can see this is the total number of hours that I have document draft. This is the number of hours I have for document review, for legal, for on-site work, for project management, for any of the different pieces of metadata that you have. You can group and see the roll-ups of information here. So for this project, we are going to say that we need to add a new task, an additional review that's going to push out our project by another 10 days, another 2 weeks. So I have actually added in one task here. And I, as I said, for how I manage my projects, have put in a prefix. I like to start mine with CR001 for change request. You could do whatever it is you like, whether it's an addition, whether it's an amendment. But I like to clearly be able to see when I'm scrolling through my projects, which ones are an addition. So I have added in a brand new task. I have associated it with being in a document review. It's not part of any construction area. I have given it a number of hours. I have given it an extended duration. And I have linked it to the other tasks in my project. So once my mobilization complete milestone has been completed, then this task can start, and it's going to add a 10-day delay to my project. And then this task here is going to immediately follow that. I like to use the Inactivate to my plans as well, and we'll see it more in our next scenario, because if this is something that is being considered internally, but it's not for sure yet, I can put it in here. So I can see here's what it'll do to my dates. It'll push out this summary, this deliverable to June 8th. I can see what it would do to my hours. I can see what the impact of this schedule is. But until we're ready, Let's look at our dates. It ends June 8th. I can inactivate it here. None of that is going to be, there we go. None of that is going to be shown in my roll-ups, not the number of hours, not my finish dates, because it's an active. I'm not saying that this is an active task for my project yet. This is a similar recommendation for using templates, is inactivating your tasks as well. But saying I do want to go ahead and continue with that, then I can go ahead and keep it active, say this is going to be something that I want to look at. If I add in a column for baseline finish, I can see that my baseline finish has a populated value for almost all of my tasks. Looks like not all of them. I added some of them a little late. But that new task that I have for a change request is not being captured right now. So as my project progresses, I will not be able to calculate work variances, cost variance, anything like that against this task until I have added it to a set of baselines. So I'm going to come to my project ribbon at the top and then set baseline, set baseline. If you look at my dropdown, I do have baseline 1 and baseline 0 set, as I said I normally do. And so these two have already been set. What I want to do for this new number of hours is I don't want to overwrite everything in a baseline value set. I have variances tracked. I don't want to lose them. I don't consider this a major change to my project, just something minor. So what I want to be able to do is incorporate it into an existing set of baseline values. We don't want to do it for our baseline 1. Again, that one is never going to change. But instead, what I want to do is I want to include this in my current baseline values that are going to be tracked for not my entire project, because it will overwrite all of your baseline values and zero out those variances. As soon as you overwrite your baseline for your entire project, all of the variance that you've captured so far is zeroed out. So I don't want to do it for my entire project. I want to do it only for this selected task for change request that I have. So I'm going to select that task, confirm it's selected, choose my selected tasks here, and I want to roll up to any summary task that it's a part of. And then if I have any subtasks under it, I want to make sure that those are rolled up as well. That way my baseline values make sense. My baseline summaries will make sense. So I'm going to choose my selected tasks, go ahead and click OK. It will prompt you that you've already set it. Do you want to make an overwrite, which is usually when I move things to the side and make sure I have selected tasks chosen and I have chosen only the one task. I'm going to go ahead and click yes, and you'll see nothing else in my project changes. My dates are still different here, so you can see that it didn't update those, but it did now add this to an existing set of baselines that I can track. So now as this task has a % complete put on it, let's add in some, I'll show my split screen here. Change that to work. So now as we add in actual work for my project manager, and that calculates, it'll update the variance just as it would for the other parts of your project. So if this is going to cause an impact to your downstream duration, and you want to make sure that this is communicated, one helpful visual for being able to share that is, we're not going to do our timeline, we're going to do our timeline up here, is to add that into the timeline up here. You can see I have several different parts of my project that I've already added to the timeline, but you can add in your change request tasks here to show the impact of that. If you do inactivate it, you'll see that it's, oh, my task is in progress. If you don't have progress on it, you can inactivate it and it will not show up here. So calling out those particular tasks, you can make it lie separately on its own if you want to show the true impact. Like this, for example, so that you can see that your change request task here is going to delay it by 10 days, and that this new set of tasks can't start until this has been completed. And now if I want to group on that particular field, I'll be able to see that those new change request hours have been added in that now I can start to track to. Hide some of my things over here. So that walked through just a very basic change management, how to add it in, how to make sure it's incorporated to track to, and then how to share. So our next scenario is going to be a bit more complex. We have a similar starting point where we're saying that our project has been scoped, it's been agreed to, and the project is now in execution, work's begun. But now there's going to be what I like to consider a major scope change. And that does usually vary by organization, which you consider to be a major scope change. But in this particular case, the request is going to impact several parts of the project. And I need to make sure that I reflect those all the way across and be able to communicate and share progress on that particular change request as the project progresses. So some of the main questions that we are going to be addressing is how to incorporate those, how to track them, how to understand what areas of your project will be impacted, and then how, again, to view your schedule before making them official, which is using that Inactivate feature. I have a separate project for this specific scenario. This one is a fundraising event. It's also in execution. I have my tasks here. These ones have been completed. As I scroll down, a couple of my tasks have been completed. If I want to see what my milestones are, to see where those are at, again, I can highlight those. I can see my milestones as they come through. My project's going to go through several key stages. It's going to go through the initiation, the planning, the preparation, the day of the fundraising event, and the closing of that event. So I have defined my work breakdown structure to have those as my top level deliverables. And then I have sub of each one for the different parts of the work. I also have a task stage custom fields where I have identified a set of lookup values for what part of the project it belongs to. And I've identified that for all of the different tasks throughout my project. If I go to my variance table, again, just to make a check so that everyone can see where we are at so far. So far this project is on track. We are doing a wonderful job. It is scheduled to start and finish at where I originally had said that this would be. If I look at my work number of hours, I do have a variance. I am behind or I am ahead of budget by 200 hours. So for this particular example, I have been requested by this client that the fundraising event that was originally supposed to be 100 people now needs to have an additional 150 people. And so that's what I would consider a major scope change. I need to make sure that I go back through the event, the permits, the printing service, the food plan. I need to go back through every major section of my project to figure out what is that impact going to be. I have pre-added so that no, you didn't have to watch me type several different tasks here to help with that. So in order to incorporate an entirely, almost double the amount of people I'd planned for, I have gone through and I have added in tasks into all of the sections that are going to be affected. I have added in a task, again, starting it with CR001, and I have added what is going to be both the hours and the timeline impact of this change. I'm going to come to my details section here. I'm going to show that at the same time. And then if there were any costs that were associated with that, which in this task there were not. Let's scroll down, find another one. Update contract to include additional time, starting it with that prefix, assigning the resources with hours, and any additional costs that are going to be associated with this. I have added in that change request, and I have created those predecessor and task dependencies to make sure that if this task gets updated, that it's going to impact down schedule. So in each part of that, I'm going to add in those new tasks, and I'm going to update that task stage as not planning, but being a change request task. I'm going to go through and activate them. I did have several. You can see my summary tasks are being updated, added in my change request task stage, come down here. Not sure how many I put in here. All right, looks like that's it. So I have added in several new change request tasks. I have another one up here at the top just for capturing kind of bucket hours. The reason I really like task level fields for this is because at this point, if I now want to be able to see where my change request tasks are and what the roll up is, here's my change request group. These are all of the tasks. It's not in chronological order. It's not in my work breakdown structure order, but I can see that this is adding 103 hours to my project. These tasks are adding 117 days across the various parts of my project. And I can even see the resources that are going to be needed to help make and cover that change. Ungroup that one. And these are not right now a part of any updated baseline value that I have set. I have just added them to what is my current project tracking to. So at this point, if I am going to go do my analysis, again, I'm not sure I want to make this change yet, but I want to see what the impacts of it are going to be. Can come to my view ribbon, come to my tables, and first I want to look at my cost impact. This is a custom table. I'm not sure why, but this custom table is going to show me my baseline dollar value, which is just over 100,000. And with the addition of those change request tasks, it's now going to increase the cost of the project by about $20,000. Again, if I want to add in that custom fields and I want to do a group, you can see that here as well. Just for this is adding $15,100 alone just for this set of change request tasks. Do a no group. You can also look at it in the same way by looking at your work values. How many hours is it going to add on just by having this? Add in my task stage, again, so that I can group, I can roll up, group on this field. Here is my change request tasks. This is adding 103 hours to my project. Do a no group on that field. And lastly, I'm going to look at my variance table. This time I'm not going to do any groups, not going to group by my task stage, but I can see now as I scroll down here, some of those, we don't have any variances here. This is not going to be very helpful for showing us which ones have not been incorporated just yet into what we are looking to do. Look at our timeline again, and another way to communicate that what these changes to your schedule are going to be is by putting in to your timeline the key tasks. Which ones are change request tasks that need to be clearly put into a timeline so that you can communicate. Remove that from our timeline. So since I do want to make sure that I start tracking to these because my project is still ongoing, it still has quite a bit of time left, I want to make sure that I I'm going to just re-baseline my entire project. I'm going to say from this point forward, I want to start tracking my variances with these tasks, these durations, these estimates in mind. So if I come to set baseline, again, I already have my original, my baseline 1, and I already have my baseline 0 tasks have already been set. So at this point in the project, I want to come here to set baseline and set baseline. And just like I set it 2 times at the very beginning of my project, I am going to set it 2 times now as well. I want to set it into my baseline 2 slot for my entire project. Again, keeping this point in time available, I reset my baseline on April 6th. And then I immediately want to come back to set baseline, and set it again for my current baseline that I am tracking to. This time I am going to do it for my entire project. I am okay with everything here being zeroed out to start tracking it from this point. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Yes, I am sure I want to overwrite. And now all of those new change request tasks are going to be added in. If further on down the line you have an additional change request, let's just add in something here. Additional prints requested. And you would like to re-baseline your entire project again. In this case, you would set baseline 3, and then come right back and set it for baseline 0. These would typically have different dates on them for when you actually set it so that you can see the last time that you did create a new set of baseline values. And since this is the one you're tracking to, it will only have that most current date, but here is where you can see those periodic snapshots. I'm going to come back to my entry table. So in this particular case, again, just like we did with our first scenario, this is something that has been requested by my client, but I have not necessarily gotten the okay to move forwards just yet. So if I look at my schedule now, I can see the different hours that we're going to have, the different costs that's going to be impacted. But again, I can come build the schedule, build everything out, and then activate them until I get the okay that we're moving forward with this change. This allows you to kind of do some scenarios, some what ifs, so that you can plan and be ahead of when that change actually comes into play. I like to communicate these changes a lot. Using this method, I build everything out and I say, if you want to do this, it's going to add an additional month to our project. And this is exactly why. So you can have all of them be in the part of the project that they belong to. So we have our permit section here, and then this change request task belongs to this permit section. Another way you can handle your change request tasks is to create an entirely new change request section down here below. This is not one that I had pulled together just yet, but if we have a change request one here, still would keep this here. We'll have new addition to the project. And down here is where then you would keep one bucket, one set of tasks for all of the change requests that need to be captured. So both options I have used before. This is the method that I typically use by identifying it here and then with a custom field. There are a couple of other views. I'm going to use my right click over here. I can use my task usage view to look at my project schedule similar to my work breakdown structure. It has my summary tasks. Let's scroll back up here. My summary tasks and then my tasks. But underneath each one, it also is going to show per person their work, their baseline work, their assignments. And then on the right, you have your time phase data to show you how much time is going to be asked of each resource in a certain week, a certain month, a certain day. I'm going to add in a column here for baseline work. And you can see that this goes down to all the way down to the resource level. This one is just a cost resource. There's no work, but it actually would set that for each of the different resources as you go down. So if this person is scheduled 8 hours and you have another resource scheduled for 6 hours and you set the baseline, this would capture it as you go through, which means then when you go to look at your work variance, you'll be able to see that chairperson was scheduled for 2 hours and they have worked 4 hours. Or your volunteer team was scheduled to work 20 hours, but they have worked 40 hours. This will go down to show you exactly by task and then even by person where that typically over budget and overspending has come from. I'm going to change my view here as well to my resource usage. Oh, wait, task usage. One more thing. My task usage here is where I can also add in task custom fields. So again, I want to know where all of my change request time is, what the tasks are, what the resources are. I can add in any task fields to this view. And again, I can group on it. So focusing only on my change request, these are my change request tasks, change request resources, change request time. Again, rolling up all of the work. And I can see exactly where all that time was charged by adding in other columns just like you would anywhere else. Those are the actual hours that are charged against my change request tasks. You can also see your actual work compared here by right-clicking and showing either actual work or baseline work for the same. For this task, here's my work, actual, and baseline. If I switch to then my resource usage view, because a lot of times when you have change requests, it doesn't only impact the cost of your project, but it'll also impact, do you have enough people to complete the work? Your resource usage view will be able to show you if you have any over allocations, which I see right here. My chairperson is over allocated. I have my red man, and all of his data right here is red. And also in my time scale over here, I can see exactly which month is causing the overallocation. So from here, project can't tell you what you should do outside of the tool, but it can tell you that when May comes, your chairperson is going to have a problem. They are only available for 40 hours a week. I've made them 100% person, and they have 70 hours worth of tasks to complete. And I can see right here which tasks those are. So outside of the tool, do you need to add people? Do you need to move tasks to start at different times? Do you need to bring on additional resources? That I cannot answer, but at least it will tell you here where your problems are going to be. If I collapse this, I think we have one more over allocation down here for our publicity manager. I can see also for May, 46 hours. So not as big of an over allocation, but in the month of May, this person might have trouble getting all of their tasks done. And you have the same options here to add in the actual work if you want to, so that you can again see per person how much time do they actually spend for each of the tasks that they are assigned to. If I want to look at my cost table, I can look at it in any of the views, in my Gantt chart, my task usage, my resource usage. And if I want to look at it by resources, I've associated each resource with a cost. So any task that they're on is going to incur a cost to me. I can see exactly where that is. My chairperson, I can see their total cost for the project is $25,000. I baseline them with the same. They've actually incurred $5,500 and so on. Looking at my task usage, I can do the very same thing. I can look at that from a cost perspective as well. This is giving me a lot of additional costs to the project just by having this change request here, about $15,000. And I can see exactly which task and which resource that is causing that time to add up. So that does end our webinar, how to look at changes. Hopefully you got a little insight to how to communicate some of those changes, how to drill down into the details so that you can see where you're at versus where you needed to be. We do have some upcoming webinars in April, and we are working on our May schedule this week. So if you have any recommendations, happy to answer them, happy to put them on our schedule. We do have 3 more for April. We have an 8 Steps to Scheduling Success, which focuses on Microsoft Project, and the 8 steps that we recommend that you walk through to set up your schedules appropriately, how to create dependencies, work with resources. Then we have a webinar for how to use and create custom fields in Project Online. This is more of an admin webinar, but of course anyone's welcome to get some ideas, where we're going to look at how to set up task, project, and resource custom fields at the enterprise level, whether they show you data, whether they show you a graphical indicator, and how to use and incorporate them into your existing views into your Project Online environment. And then at the end of April, we have a 4-hour intro to project course that goes through your 8 steps to scheduling success, but in a lot more detail. And then it's very interactive. We welcome questions, we welcome scenarios as we go through. I appreciate everyone's participation and joining of our webinar today. If you have any specific questions, I like to be challenged when it comes to my Microsoft project knowledge. So if you have any specific scenarios that you are thinking, how could this be done in Microsoft Project? I would be happy to review, happy to think on that. So this is my direct email address, or you can contact our info email address at info@intigent.com. So I appreciate your attendance, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your day.